Hello there. So today I'm going to talk to you about some alternatives to spaying in cats and dogs. So the two biggest alternatives, or one of them is not an alternative to spay, it's just a different procedure. So our classic spay procedure is an ovariohysterectomy. One thing that's being taught nowadays is an ovariectomy. So you're still getting a sterilized animal when you do that procedure, but instead of removing the ovaries, the uterus, and the cervix, you're just removing the ovaries themselves. So you still have a uterus, you still have a cervix, right? So with this procedure, you are removing their hormones because you remove those ovaries, but you are leaving little bits of that reproductive tract. Now, the reason that this procedure is being taught in veterinary schools is there is some thought process that it is a faster procedure and it causes a shorter healing time and whatnot after the procedure. I don't know if I wholeheartedly agree with that, but I will say if you have a student who is only taught that procedure, I can understand how it would be faster than doing a full spay procedure for them. Whenever I was in school, I was taught how to do a spay on the majority of dogs in 10 to 12 minutes, and I actually noted that doing an ovariectomy took me longer because it was more ligatures inside the body, but that's because I learned the old way. So if they're learning the new way, rock on. The big thing that it can cause issues with is you still have tissue that can become cancerous, so you can still see uterine tumors and whatnot in these dogs. Now, the kind of alternative to a spay procedure is what's called an OSS, or an ovarian sparing spay. This is where they do the opposite and they take out the uterus and the cervix and leave the ovaries. So when you're doing that, you don't have the uterus for them to develop puppies in, so they can't technically get pregnant, but you're still having the hormones from those ovaries themselves. Now, this is not a procedure that I personally love. One, if you leave any little bit of cervix, you can end up with what's called a stump pyometra, and I'll have a whole nother talk on pyometras later, but that's essentially a life-threatening infection that can happen on just a tiny little bit of cervix that is left. But the thing that concerns me the most is these dogs are still cycling, so you still have the potential for mammary or breast cancer in dogs, and they're still going to attract male dogs. And one thing I have personally seen is a female dog that had this surgery that ended up with a condition called sperm peritonitis. That's where she cycled, she attracted a male, the male bred her, and because it was essentially a dead-end passage, when he bred her, he broke through the scar tissue from the cervix removal and deposited sperm directly into the abdomen, which then caused a whole body infection, peritonitis, and then sepsis, and that dog did die from that condition, even with intensive treatment and attempts to fix it. So it does come with some cons for sure. I do like the concept of doing a ovarian sparing spay when they're young so that they cannot breed, and then when they're 2 or 3 years old, going back in and removing the ovaries so you complete the spay. But that does come with the fact that they're having 2 surgeries, 2 anesthetic events, and the ovaries are much harder to find when they're not attached to the uterus. So you have a little bit more of a challenging surgery that can be dangerous for them. So if you're not wanting to get your dogs fully spayed, there are some alternatives, but everything comes with its own pros and cons.